Who doesn't love a dwarf, man? They're short, they're stout, they're strong, they're cool. I like dwarves. Today I'm going to talk about Slayer. There's actually two ways that I think you can play Slayer really effectively. I call them, Power Slayer and Speed Slayer. And today what I'm going to show you is what I call a Power Slayer build. So, let's go over the basics first. Trophy Hunter. Pretty cool ability here. Every enemy you hit gives you a stacking damage buff. It increases the damage you do by 10%, stacks up to 3 times, and the buff lasts 2 seconds. And then your career skill, your leap, or leaps forward, and everyone around him, all the enemies, they fly back, they get stunned, and he gets 30% attack speed for 10 seconds. And then he naturally gets 7.5% extra attack speed, and Ringy Grit, of course, charged attacks can't be interrupted by damage. So, now let's get into the talents. Slayer's Fury, pretty easy choice here. Melee killing blows restore temporary health based off the health of the enemy slain. I think that's a no-brainer since, unlike the Ironbreaker, this is a completely offensive kind of character, and I think the talent should reflect that. So, you're going to be doing a lot of killing, so every enemy you kill will give you temp health. Now, this is an absolute must for this build. Skull Splitter. Wielding two-handed weapons in both slots increases the power of Barden by 15%. This is really big and critical for what, I call the Power Slayer build. This hack and slash, I guess you could use that. I don't think that does a whole lot. And then this would be the one for the Speed Slayer, but that'll be another video. This is cool. The Slayer's kind of a unique character because he doesn't have any range weapon. The DLC, I think for Winds of Magic, added like throwing axes that he can use, but I think that's dumb to use those. I would never use throwing axes with this guy, even though they do pretty decent damage. You only have like 4 of them, and if you use it, if you use those, you pretty much have to use this hack and slash talent. Otherwise, you're just wasting a slot here. So I think it's better just to use 2 weapons and go for the Speed or Power Slayer build. And of course down here, Smiter. I've talked about it before. I love Smiter. The first enemy you hit always gets staggered, and you deal 20% more damage to staggered enemies. So that means every enemy you hit is going to get staggered. 20% more damage to all enemies. It's pretty great. I wouldn't use this. Mainstay, 40% more damage to staggered enemies. Hit each hit against a staggered enemy, that's another kind of stagger, up to 60. If you're going for a really staggery kind of build, like I could see using that, but Slayer just does so much damage and he kills so quickly that really Smiter is the best choice. Let's get into high tally here. This just gives you another stack on Trophy Hunter. So instead of your 10% stacking buff going to 3 times, it goes to 4 times. You can get up to 40% increased damage for your weapons, which is awesome. And I think that's much better than the movement speed talent and the cooldown reduction leap. This is the choice right here. And then just, for a little bit of tankiness, Grimnir's Focus is the one that I like to go with. The Slayer actually got recently reworked, I think about a month or 2 ago. This used to be like, I think if you killed an enemy, you got 40% reduced damage. But now it's just hitting enemy with a charge attack. Gives you 40% reduced damage taken for 5 seconds, which is really nice. It's a lot better than it was. I used to use this one before I kind of knew what I was doing. Oblivious to pain, damage from elite enemies or monsters is reduced to 10 damage or half of its original value, whichever is highest. I could see this on maybe like a champion or even really veteran, like a lower level, a lower difficulty mission would work, but like on Legend or even Cataclysm, like you're not going to take 10 damage. You're going to take the half damage because it's going to be like 50 damage. So I would just go with this. I mean, you can keep this going. You have control over it. And, you know, it's just, it incentivizes you to just attack more to keep yourself alive. Barge, effective dodges, push enemies out of the way. I mean, I've honestly never used this one, so I couldn't tell you how well it works, but I would think that to be kind of useless. This is the one I would go with. Now here, I've been using Crunch ever since the rework. There used to be a talent here which let him Slayer jump like way farther, and it was, I guess it was kind of like a meme. It was pretty fun, but it wasn't very practical. Now when you do your leap, the idea of it is basically just to do it right into the ground where you're standing, so you don't really move anywhere. But the stagger effect is double, basically. So enemies just fly back. Especially really good if you're surrounded and you're just like, there's a ton of plague monks on you or something. It's just perfect. Dolby drop increases attack damage when airborne during leap. Yeah, I mean, this is kind of fun. This would be fun if you're like, you know, you get a nice high spot and there's a monster coming. You know, it's fun to mess around with, but it's not a reliable enough talent, I think. And no escape. Leaps attack speed buff also increases movement speed by 25% for the duration. I mean, if you're trying to like speed run the map, I guess you could use that and impatience, and you could just like fly through. But I think Crunch is the way to go, personally. Well, let's get into the gear. I think this is one of the best weapons in the game, and it's the Great Hammer. Pretty much perfect for Slayer. I go for power versus chaos and attack speed because it is a little bit slow, so the attack speed will get that going faster. And power versus chaos, of course. Chaos enemies have slightly more health than their Skaven counterparts, so I just use that to make them die pretty easily. And Swift Slang, of course, critical hits, you get more attack speed. And the other two-handed weapon I use the War Pick. This is pretty much I really do this for the crit damage. I never really use it though. I pretty much just use the hammer itself, but I'll bust this out every once in a while to mess around with it. Swift Slang again, of course, if you want. You can go with crit chance, crit power here. That might even be better than chaos and crit power. I just put that on there because it's, you know, it's kind of something that's useful. But like I said, I'm going to be using the hammer most of the time. You can use the Great Axe if you're comfortable with that, of course, for the second slot, but I would definitely recommend Great Hammer as your number one. For the necklace, 2 stamina, 20 health. I've talked about this combination before. I think every character should go with health as like one of their traits here. And stamina, I think, is good for this kind of guy because he's really offensive, so like block cost reduction, you know, it just doesn't go together, you know. He's not a defensive guy. He's not going to be blocking for long amounts of time. He's going to want to like do his charge attack, and he's going to want to push the enemy away. And then Bark Skin actually works very nicely with what's that talent called? Grimnir's Focus. Yeah. So when this is active and you take 2 hits, you're going to be taking 80% reduced damage for the duration of these effects, which is pretty nice. And then for the charm, I go for power versus chaos, attack speed, you know, nothing crazy. The same shit here, pretty much. And then concoction. His cooldown for the crunch leap is 40 seconds, I believe, so you can just have any kind of potion on you, drink it, you'll get that ability right back pretty much instantly. Your trinket, curse resistance, crit chance, you know, pretty much all you'll need for this guy. I like shrapnel. It's good, like, if there's a patrol and somebody triggers it, which, let's be honest, it shouldn't happen, but it does happen. You can just throw a grenade, somebody else can throw another grenade, it'll blow them to bits for the most part. Curse resistance for the Grims, of course, keeps your health higher, so you don't get all the way down to like 40 health with the 2 Grims. And then crit chance just lets him, you know, crit. Pretty much, you know, nothing too crazy there. To show the stack effect, you would see 4,350, 4,750, that's a crit, 9,000, 5,525, keeps critting. You can see it raises by almost 2,000 damage there, which is really nice. And the charge attack is a complete side swipe, which gives you great crowd control. A little taunt, side swipes, it's nice.